People often tell me that Jesus and Hekate wouldn't sit at the same table, that they couldn't possibly exist in the same space in one person. And sometimes I used to wonder if that was true. But in my life, they do. Christ has always been the steady presence that carried me through my darkest moments, whispering courage when everything felt impossible. And Hekate? Hekate has always been the guide who taught me how to stand, how to hold boundaries, how to move through shadows without fear. Some people might hear that and think it's contradictory, or maybe even blasphemous. But what I've learned is that the divine is not threatened by wholeness. The divine doesn't shrink in the face of complexity, and neither should we. I know that this episode might feel intimidating at first. We're talking about religion, spirituality, and personal devotion. And maybe that feels heavy, unfamiliar, or even like it doesn't belong to you. But I want to say this clearly. You don't have to be Catholic, Christian, or even a witch, or even believe in God to listen here. You don't have to have all the answers, or even know what you believe. This is a space to explore, to witness, to feel, to sit with complexity and integration, just like I do in my own life. So whether you're spiritual, curious, skeptical, or somewhere in between, you're welcome here. You don't need to fit into a box. You don't need permission. You just need your own willingness to listen. I know that there are people who listen to me and wonder if I'm holding on to Jesus because I'm afraid to fully break away from Catholicism. And I want to say this gently. That's a fair question. I've asked myself that too. When you grow spiritually, you have to sit with hard questions. Am I staying because I'm conditioned? Because I'm scared? Because I don't know who I am without this? I've done that work, and I've sat in that discomfort. What I found wasn't fear. What I found was a relationship. I didn't stay with Christ because I was afraid to leave. I stayed because in my darkest moments, through miscarriages, through an abusive relationship, through the mental breakdown that followed, through making painful reproductive decisions when I was young, I felt held. I felt steadied. I felt a whisper that said, "You will survive this." That's not doctrine to me. That's lived experience. And stepping away from parts of a religious structure that no longer aligned with me wasn't stepping away from him. It was stepping toward honesty. I don't believe the divine is fragile. I don't believe Christ is threatened by my questions. The Jesus I know walked with people at the edges of society. He wasn't afraid of complexity. He wasn't afraid of women with complicated stories. And he wasn't afraid of people who didn't fit into neat boxes, like Mary Magdalene, for example, who has been so misunderstood for centuries. She was there, right alongside him, fully seen and fully honored. Part of why Jesus and Hekate resonate so strongly for me is that both have been profoundly misunderstood. Jesus was a radical healer, a teacher, and friend to outcasts. He was labeled dangerous. He was accused of blasphemy and ultimately executed because he challenged authority and embraced people others wanted to ignore. Hekate, goddess of the crossroads. She's the goddess of magic, the goddess of witches, shadow, and transition. Hekate has always been demonized and feared because she operates in liminal spaces and holds power that others don't understand. She's not sinister. She is guidance, protection, and boundary. Both of them walked between worlds, literally and metaphorically, and both were labeled dangerous by those who didn't understand them. Both, in their own ways, teach us that being misunderstood doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're powerful. So when people say, isn't it hypocritical to talk about Jesus and Hekate in the same breath? I understand why that feels confusing from the outside. But here's the truth. I don't experience the divine as divided. Christ in my life is compassion. He is endurance. He is the steady rock. Hekate is boundary. She is transition. She is the guide through shadow. One taught me how to be held. The other taught me how to stand. And that's not contradiction. That's integration. And if one day my children ask me how I can say I don't agree with everything the church teaches, but I still love Jesus, I will tell them this. It's okay to outgrow structures. It's okay to question systems, but you don't have to abandon love just because the container changed. Faith is being honest about what you've believed, what you've experienced, and living from that truth. Sometimes faith is believing without seeing. I don't stay with Jesus because I'm afraid. I stay because his love stayed with me. And I am not afraid. Jesus is at my left, Hekate is at my right, and together they walk with me. That is how they are in my head and my heart. And in that presence, I feel whole. So that's it for this episode of Momster Mash. Come as you are, bring your shadows. Find me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. See me on TikTok at MomsterLolo or email me at momstermashpodcast@gmail.com. Oh my goodness. Follow, review, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear that their shadows are welcome too. And always, my darling loves, protect your energy. I'll see you soon.